The government signed up to the COP26 request for countries to strengthen their 2030 targets by the end of 2022. But just hours later, the government said its 2030 target was fixed. Why did the Prime Minister tell the world one thing and then tell the Australian people the exact opposite?
The Prime Minister has...
Mr Speaker, the member's question is not telling the truth, Mr Speaker. What the COP26 arrangement was is members were invited to look at these things, Mr Speaker, and that's all we agreed to do, Mr Speaker.
The Prime Minister will resume his seat. Members on my left, if they weren't interjecting, could probably hear the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister has... Order. Order. The Prime Minister has the call.
So thank you, Mr Speaker. The member who's asked the question has misrepresented what occurred at COP26, Mr Speaker. They can't just bend it to suit their political sledges, Mr Speaker, and to try and pursue the political games they so much enjoy and love in this place, Mr Speaker. And so what was put forward by the member is just incorrect, Mr Speaker. We have a 2030 target, Mr Speaker. We have a plan to achieve that 2030 target. We have a 2050 target, Mr Speaker, and we have a plan to achieve that target. Mr Speaker, those opposite don't have a 2030 target. They don't have a plan to achieve that target. They don't have a plan to achieve even their 2050 target, Mr Speaker. And like with so many things before this next election, Mr Speaker, they are a vacant space. And so all the Australian people can assume is what they did at the last election. What they did at the last election, Mr Speaker, which was to have targets, Mr Speaker.
The Prime Minister will resume his seat. The Manager of Opposition Business on a point of order.
Well, unsurprisingly, it's on direct relevance, Mr Speaker. There's nothing about alternatives in the question, and the entire answer is about alternatives.
The question goes to the government's policy on in relation to COP26, strengthening targets. The Prime Minister has the call. I would ask the Prime Minister to remain relevant to the question.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. So the projection that we've provided to COP26 is that we will have a 35% reduction in emissions on our 2005 levels. Already we're at 20.8%, Mr Speaker, below our 2005 levels, which exceeds so many other countries like the United States, Canada, New Zealand, Mr Speaker, Japan, Korea and many more, Mr Speaker. The Australian achievement on reducing our emissions, particularly for economies such as ours. That has occurred at the same time we've seen one of the largest expansions of our LNG industry, Mr Speaker, the largest, in fact, we have seen in our LNG, Mr Speaker, than at any other time. So our government is delivering on reducing emissions, but at the same time ensuring that we're seeing electricity prices fall, Mr Speaker, because our policy is about technology, not taxes. Those opposite are interested in taxes. We're interested in technology, Mr Speaker. They reject our policy, which is for technology, not taxes. That's what our policy is. They're not for that. Our policy is for people to have choices, not being told what to do by the government, Mr Speaker, when it comes to what they want to buy and what they want to drive, Mr Speaker. That's our policy. We want choices, not mandates. Those opposite are opposing our policy. Our policy is to have a portfolio of technologies, whether it's hydrogen, Mr Speaker, or carbon capture, use and storage. And we want to see the funds from ARENA, Mr Speaker, and the other important government programs that can invest, Mr Speaker, in these. And those opposite, the Labor Party, are against it because they voted against carbon capture and storage, Mr Speaker. So to all of those up in the hunter, all of those up in the hunter, all of those who work in the aluminium sector, Mr Speaker, all of those who work in the minerals industry, the Labor Party voted against us
Prime Minister's
spending
time has
resources
expired.
on